I never thought marriage could hold so many little mysteries. For years, I believed I knew everything about my husband, Daniel. We shared the same house, the same bed, the same meals. But slowly I began to realize there was one part of his life he never let me into, where some of our money went every single month. It started small. I would sit at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of me, calculator in hand. "Daniel," I said one evening, tapping a receipt. "We're short again. I balanced everything last week, but the account looks lighter." He glanced up from his plate, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Oh, don't worry about it, Claire. Just a couple of things I had to take care of." "A couple of things?" I frowned. "What kind of things?" He avoided my eyes, chewing slowly, then shrugged. "His family stuff. Nothing important. Family stuff." The words felt vague, slippery, as if he had chosen them carefully so I wouldn't press further. At first I told myself not to nag. We had a good life, a roof over our heads and meals on the table. Why make a fuss? But the habit continued like clockwork. Around the same date every month money would disappear. One Saturday morning while folding laundry I decided to ask again, gently this time. "Daniel," I called out as he tightened his tie in the mirror, "I noticed another withdrawal yesterday. Was that the family stuff again?" He stiffened for a second, then forced a smile. "Yes, Claire. Just helping someone out. Don't worry about it, all right?" "Helping who?" I pressed, folding a shirt carefully just to keep my hands busy. He turned, his smile slipping. "You trust me, don't you?" The question hung in the air like a threat. My chest tightened. "Of course I do. But Daniel, when money vanishes every month, I have a right to know where it goes." He sighed, brushing past me to grab his briefcase. "It's complicated. Please just let it go. Let it go." Easy for him to say. For the rest of the day those words echoed in my head. A week later I caught him in the living room late at night, whispering on the phone. I stood quietly in the hallway, the glow of the lamp spilling over his face. His tone was soft, almost tender. "Yes, I sent it. Did you get it?" Pause. "Good. I'll keep doing it. Don't worry. She doesn't need to know." My breath caught in my throat. She doesn't need to know. Was he talking about me? Who was she? And who was he sending money to every single month? I wanted to step into the room, confront him right there. But my feet felt rooted to the ground. My hands trembled against the wall as my mind spiraled through every possible scenario. Was he hiding another woman? A child I didn't know about? Or was it truly family stuff, like he claimed? The next morning I tried to stay calm. I made pancakes, poured coffee, smiled as though my stomach wasn't in knots. Finally, as he reached for the newspaper, I blurted out, "Daniel, who were you talking to on the phone last night?" His hand froze midair. Slowly he lowered the paper. "You were eavesdropping?" "I wasn't eavesdropping," I said quickly, my heart racing. "You were right there in the living room. I heard you." His jaw tightened. "It was my sister. He's going through a hard time. I send her money every month to help her out." I blinked, stunned. "Your sister? You've never mentioned this before." "I didn't want to burden you," he said flatly. "It's my responsibility. She's family." Something about his tone chilled me. I wanted to believe him, but why hide it? Why the secrecy, the late-night calls, the dismissive answers? "Daniel," I whispered, "if you're really helping your sister, why keep it from me? We're supposed to share everything." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Because I knew you'd make a big deal out of it. You always want to control every penny. Well, this one isn't yours to control." The words sliced deeper than he realized. Not mine to control. As though I was some outsider in my own marriage. That night, lying in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling while he snored softly. I felt a strange mix of betrayal and curiosity twisting in my chest. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe it really was just his sister. But something about the way he said she doesn't need to know made me feel like I was standing outside a locked door, listening to whispers inside. I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't let this go. If Daniel wasn't going to tell me the full truth, I would find it myself. And in that moment, staring into the darkness, I made a silent promise. I would meet this mysterious sister. And when I did, the truth would either heal my doubts, or shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The next morning, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest that coffee couldn't wash away. Daniel had left early for work, his side of the bed already cold when I opened my eyes. I sat at the edge of the mattress, twisting the blanket in my hands, replaying his words again and again. It's my sister. She's family. It's not yours to control. The more I thought about it, the less it made sense. If it was really just his sister, why hide it? Why not introduce me to her? Why whisper on the phone like a guilty teenager? I needed answers. Later that day, while dusting the bookshelf in the living room, I noticed his old leather wallet resting on the side table. Daniel was careless sometimes. He often tossed it around when he rushed out of the house. I hesitated, my heart pounding, then slid it open. Tucked behind a few business cards was a folded receipt from the bank. I smoothed it out with trembling fingers. Another wire transfer. Same date as always. But instead of a name, the receipt only carried an account number. I whispered to myself, no name, just numbers. My stomach churned. Could be anyone. That night when Daniel came home, I decided to test him. I cooked his favorite pot roast, lit a candle on the table and tried to act casual. As he cut into his food, I leaned forward. Daniel, I was thinking, I said softly, maybe you should invite your sister over one weekend. I'd love to meet her. His fork paused midair. His eyes darted up to mine, sharp and guarded. Why? Because she's family, I replied. If you're helping her so much, shouldn't I at least know her? It feels strange, being kept in the dark. He chewed slowly, then set his fork down. Claire, she's private. She doesn't like strangers in her life. Strangers. I repeated, my voice tightening. I'm your wife, Daniel. He pushed his plate away, irritation flashing across his face. Look, just leave it alone. You'll only complicate things. The room fell silent, the candle flickering between us. I forced a smile, but inside I was boiling. 2 days later, I called my best friend Lila. She was the kind of friend who always told the truth, even when I didn't want to hear it. Lila, I whispered into the phone, pacing the kitchen. He says he's sending money to his sister, but I've never even met her. Isn't that strange? On the other end, Lila snorted. Strange? Claire, it's suspicious as hell. How long has this been going on? Years, I admitted, my throat tightening. I never questioned it until now. Girl, she said firmly, you need to dig. If he's lying about something this consistent, it's not small. Men don't whisper on phones at midnight unless they're hiding something. I sighed, leaning against the counter. But what if he's telling the truth? What if she really needs the help? Then why keep her hidden from you? Lila shot back. You're his wife. You deserve transparency. Her words gave me courage, though fear still gnawed at me. That evening when Daniel came home, I tried again. Can I at least talk to her on the phone? I asked as casually as I could. He froze at the doorway, his briefcase still in his hand. What? Your sister. Just a quick hello. I want her to know I don't mind you helping her. In fact, I'd like to be supportive. His expression hardened. No. She wouldn't want that. I forced a laugh to cover my unease. Daniel, don't you think it's odd? I've been married to you for 12 years and I've never spoken to her. Not once. Claire, he snapped. I said no. He brushed past me, leaving me standing in the hallway, my lips pressed tight to keep from screaming. That night, I lay awake again, my body stiff beside his. His snores rattled in the dark, but my mind was too loud to rest. Every excuse, every deflection, it all felt wrong. The breaking point came the following weekend. We were sitting in the car, stuck at a red light, when his phone buzzed. I caught a glimpse of the screen before he snatched it up. A woman's name flashed across it. Margaret. Who's Margaret? I asked quietly, my eyes fixed on him. His grip tightened around the phone. My sister. Something inside me snapped. Then let me meet her. If she's really your sister, I want to know her. I need to know her. He turned his head slowly, his eyes cold as stone. Claire, don't push this. I mean it. My chest ached, but I held his gaze. I'm not backing down this time. I'm your wife. If you can't be honest with me, then maybe I'll find her myself. His jaw clenched, the muscles twitching. Stay out of it, Claire. For your own good. For my own good. The words sent a shiver down my spine. What was he hiding that could hurt me? As we drove on in silence, my hands trembled in my lap. I didn't know who Margaret really was or why Daniel wanted to keep her away from me, but I knew one thing. This was bigger than a simple family favor. And no matter how much he warned me, I was going to uncover the truth. Even if it destroyed everything. The morning after that car ride, I couldn't shake the chill of Daniel's warning. Stay out of it, Claire. For your own good. Those words haunted me. They weren't the words of a husband protecting his wife from stress. They were the words of a man hiding something dangerous. I stood in the kitchen, clutching my coffee mug, staring out the window as the steam curled into the air. My hands trembled so badly I had to set the cup down before I spilled it. For my own good? Oh, for his. He wanted me blind. And I couldn't be blind anymore. That afternoon, once Daniel left for work, I went into his study. He always kept the door unlocked. He trusted me too much, perhaps, or maybe he simply underestimated me. The room smelled faintly of leather and old books. I ran my fingers across his desk, the polished wood cold beneath my skin. In the top drawer I found nothing but pens, paper clips, and a half-used notepad. But the second drawer held a neat stack of bank statements. I pulled one out and scanned it, my heart pounding. The same withdrawal, same date every month. Each line confirmed what I already knew. Money was vanishing into someone else's hands. The last page caught my eye. It listed the transfer to an account under the name Margaret Hayes. Margaret. Finally, a last name. I whispered it aloud, letting it linger in the air. Margaret Hayes. Who is she really? Later that day I called Lila again. My voice shook with urgency. Lila, I found her name. Margaret Hayes. On the other end my friend whistled. Finally. That's something. Did you Google her yet? I hesitated. Not yet. I was scared of what I'd find. Claire, she said firmly, you can't stop now. Search her. At least see if she exists. With trembling hands I typed the name into the search bar. Dozens of results popped up. Social media profiles, addresses, random links. I clicked one after another, but nothing seemed to match Daniel's private sister. Some Margarets were too young, some too old, some living states away. Then one page caught my attention. A public record listing for a Margaret Hayes living less than an hour away. My breath hitched. Could it be her? I scribbled the address down on a notepad, my pen digging so deep into the paper it nearly tore. When Daniel came home that evening, I tried to act normal. I cooked dinner, laughed at his small talk, and kissed him goodnight. But inside, my heart raced with a secret rhythm. Because tomorrow, while he was at work, I was going to find Margaret Hayes. The next day, I drove nervously down winding suburban streets until I reached a modest little house with peeling paint and a broken fence. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight they ached. This is it, I told myself. This is where she lives. I parked across the street and watched. The curtains were drawn, but I could see movement inside. A shadow passed the window, slow and deliberate. My pulse quickened. Suddenly, the front door opened and an older woman stepped out. Her hair was silver, tied back in a bun, and she wore a faded cardigan. Her face was lined, but her eyes carried a sharpness that sent a shiver through me. She paused on the porch, scanning the street, and for a split second her gaze landed on my car. I ducked, my heart slamming in my chest. After a moment I peeked up again. She was gone, back inside. I sat there for nearly an hour, waiting, watching. No visitors. No signs of anyone else. Just her, alone in that quiet little house. Finally I started the engine and drove away, my thoughts spinning. If she was truly Daniel's sister, why did she look like a stranger? Why had I never heard of her before? And most importantly, why did Daniel act like keeping me away from her was a matter of life or death? That night, as I lay beside him, I couldn't keep the questions inside any longer. Daniel, I whispered, staring at the ceiling, why have I never met Margaret? Not once in 12 years. He shifted uncomfortably, half asleep. I told you, Claire. He's private. She doesn't want to meet anyone. Not even your wife? My voice cracked. His tone sharpened, fully awake now. "Claire," I said, "leave it alone." I rolled to my side, facing him in the dark. "What are you hiding from me? If she's really your sister, prove it. Let me meet her." His jaw clenched, his breathing heavy. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally he muttered, "If you keep pushing, you'll regret it." The words sliced through me like a blade. I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. But in my heart, a fire was already burning. I would not regret the truth. I would regret the lies. And no matter what Daniel said, no matter how much he tried to scare me, I was going to uncover Margaret Hayes' secret. Even if it broke me. The next morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach. Daniel had left early again, his cologne still faint in the hallway. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the notepad where I'd scribbled her name, Margaret Hayes. The letters almost mocked me, daring me to do what I was terrified of. Go back to that little house and face the woman my husband had kept hidden all these years. By noon I couldn't resist. I grabbed my purse, slipped the notepad inside and drove. My hands shook on the steering wheel as the familiar peeling paint and broken fence came into view. The house looked ordinary enough, but something about it made my skin crawl. I parked across the street again, but this time I didn't just watch. I forced myself to get out of the car. My legs felt heavy, my throat dry. Each step toward the front door echoed in my chest like a drumbeat. Finally I stood there, staring at the faded door. My hand hovered over the knocker. What if Daniel finds out? What if she slams the door in my face? But before I could decide, the door creaked open. A woman peered out. Silver hair tied back, sharp eyes that seemed to look right through me. Was her Margaret? "Yes," she asked, her voice steady but cold. I swallowed hard. "Hi, my name is Claire." My tongue stumbled. "I'm Daniel's wife." Her eyes flickered. For a split second, surprise crossed her face. Then she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Daniel's wife. Of course." I exhaled shakily. I just wanted to meet you. He's been sending money every month and I thought we should know each other." She leaned against the doorframe, studying me. "Daniel never mentioned he'd bring you here." "He didn't," I admitted quickly. "He doesn't even know I'm here." Her gaze sharpened. "Then why are you here?" I shifted on my feet, twisting my hands together. "Because he won't answer my questions. He keeps me in the dark. And honestly, I'm tired of being in the dark." Margaret's face softened just slightly, but her voice stayed guarded. "Daniel has his reasons. Some things are better left unknown." My stomach tightened. "Unknown to me? I'm his wife, Margaret. If you're really his sister, why hide from me all these years?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. "You should leave. If Daniel finds out you came here, it won't end well." The warning stung, eerily similar to Daniel's own words. "For my own good?" I whispered bitterly. She didn't answer, but the silence was loud enough. "Please," I begged, my voice cracking. "Just tell me why. What are you to him? Why does he send money every month?" Her eyes locked on mine, and for the first time I saw something flicker there. Pain. Real raw pain. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then shut it again. "I can't," she murmured. "Not yet." Frustration and desperation boiled inside me. "You owe me at least that much. I've been married to Daniel for 12 years. Do you know what it feels like being treated like a stranger in your own home? Watching money disappear, listening to whispers in the dark, and never knowing the truth." Her shoulders slumped, and she looked older, more fragile than before. "I know more about that feeling than you think," she whispered. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with secrets I couldn't reach. Finally, she stepped back into the house. "Go home, Claire. If you love yourself, if you love your marriage, let this go." And with that, the door shut. I stood frozen on the porch, staring at the faded paint. My throat ached with unshed tears. On the drive back, my mind spun. She hadn't denied being Daniel's sister. She hadn't denied the money. But she hadn't confirmed anything either. Instead, she'd given me more warnings, more reasons to fear. When I got home, Daniel was already there, sitting on the couch with a beer in his hand. His eyes narrowed when he saw me. "Where were you?" he asked. My heart skipped. I forced a smile. "Just out running errands." His gaze lingered, suspicious, but after a moment he looked away. I sank into the armchair across from him, my mind still racing. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. "If you love yourself, let this go." But how could I? Every word, every glance, every secret only pulled me deeper. And one thing was clear. Margaret knew the truth. I just had to find a way to make her tell me. I couldn't sleep that night. Margaret's words played over and over in my head like a broken record. If you love yourself, let this go. But how could I let it go? Every instinct in my body told me that Daniel wasn't just hiding a harmless sibling relationship. The secrecy, the warnings, the way her eyes had darkened when I asked questions, it all gnawed at me. By morning I knew I had no choice. I had to go back. And this time I wouldn't let her push me away with cryptic warnings. The sky was overcast when I pulled up in front of her house again. My pulse hammered as I slammed the car door and marched up the steps. My hesitation was gone. I needed answers. I knocked, firm and loud. A moment later, the door creaked open. Margaret stood there, clearly surprised. "You again," she muttered. "Yes, me again," I snapped, my voice sharper than yesterday. "You didn't give me answers, and I'm not leaving until I get them." Her eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't be here. And you shouldn't be living off my husband's money without explanation," I shot back. My hands trembled, but I kept my chin high. "So either you let me in, or I stand here shouting until your neighbors start wondering why Daniel's wife is demanding the truth at your doorstep." Her expression shifted. For the first time I saw a flicker of fear. She glanced over her shoulder, then quickly ushered me inside. The house smelled faintly of old books and lavender. It was neat but not wealthy, threadbare rugs, faded curtains, a chipped coffee table. Definitely not the home of someone swimming in Daniel's generous monthly transfers. "Sit," she said flatly, gesturing to the sofa. I sat, though my nerves buzzed like electricity. Margaret perched on the armchair across from me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Well," I demanded, "what's going on? Why all the secrecy? What is Daniel hiding from me?" Her jaw clenched. For a long moment she didn't speak. Then finally she said, "You don't understand the danger you're putting yourself in by digging." "Danger?" My voice rose. "From who? From Daniel? From you? What are you talking about?" Her eyes darted to the window as if checking for shadows. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping. "You think you know the man you married. But you don't. Daniel isn't the person you believe he is." A chill spread through me. "What do you mean?" She shook her head. "It's not my place to tell you. But you need to stop asking questions before it's too late." I slammed my hand on the coffee table, making her flinch. "Enough. I'm sick of riddles. You look me in the eye and tell me, are you his sister or not?" She froze. For a heartbeat I thought she might finally admit it. Instead she whispered, "Blood ties don't always mean family." "What the hell does that even mean?" I snapped. Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. I leaned closer, my voice low and fierce. "Margaret, I've been patient. I've been quiet. But if you don't tell me the truth right now, I swear I'll find another way. I'll dig through records, I'll hire someone if I have to. And when I find out, you'll regret not telling me first." Her eyes locked on mine, and for a moment I thought I saw something crack. Guilt, maybe even shame. Finally she whispered, "You're stronger than he thinks you are." My breath caught. "So you admit it, Daniel's lying to me." But before she could reply, a shadow passed across the window. Margaret's head whipped toward it. Her face drained of color. "Go," she hissed suddenly. "You need to leave. Now." "What? Why?" "Don't argue," she snapped, her voice sharp with fear. "If he sees you here again, it won't just be me in trouble, it'll be you." The urgency in her voice jolted me. My body moved before my brain did. I grabbed my purse and stumbled toward the door. As I stepped outside I glanced back. Margaret was standing in the hallway, her figure tense, eyes darting like a trapped animal. The door slammed shut behind me. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands. My chest heaved with anger and confusion. She hadn't given me the truth, not directly. But I'd gotten something else. Confirmation that there was a truth. That Daniel was hiding something dangerous. I started the engine, but before driving off, I whispered to myself, I won't stop. Not until I know everything. Because if Margaret wouldn't tell me, I just have to find another way. I lay awake beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling, every muscle tight with tension. His steady breathing told me he was sound asleep, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. Margaret's fear, her cryptic words, the way she practically shoved me out of her house. It all screamed at me. Daniel wasn't who I thought he was. And if I wanted the truth, I couldn't rely on anyone else to hand it to me. I had to find it myself. At 2 a.m. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could. My heart pounded as I reached for his phone on the nightstand. He always kept it close, but tonight he'd been careless, leaving it unlocked after scrolling before bed. My palms were sweaty as I swiped through his apps. The first thing I checked was his messages. Nothing unusual at first. Work group chats, a few jokes from friends. But then I noticed a thread labeled only with a number, no name. My stomach flipped. The messages were short. Daniel, sent it. Same time as usual. Unknown. Thank you. Don't let her find out. Daniel, she won't. My breath hitched. Her. That had to be Margaret. I took screenshots and quickly emailed them to myself. My hands trembled, terrified he might stir. But he didn't. He just turned over and muttered in his sleep. The next morning, I waited until Daniel left for work before digging deeper. His briefcase always sat by the front door. Sometimes he left papers behind. With shaking hands, I unlatched it and pulled out a folder. Bank statements. I spread them across the dining table, my eyes scanning line after line. Regular withdrawals, always on the same date, always in the same round figure. Not small amounts either. Enough to raise eyebrows. The payments were labeled as personal transfers. No recipient name. Just account numbers. I quickly jotted them down. I didn't know yet how to trace them, but I would find a way. Later that week, I decided to track his movements. If he was hiding something, it wasn't just in the numbers. It was in his routine. Daniel, I said casually over breakfast, are you going to the office late again tonight? He barely looked up from his toast. Probably. We've got a big client presentation coming up. I smiled sweetly. Of course. You work so hard. But as soon as he left, I grabbed my coat and followed. I kept my distance, careful not to be seen. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I tailed him across town. My husband, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, drove past his office building without slowing down. Instead, he turned down a quieter street, one lined with older houses. My pulse quickened. I knew this neighborhood. Margaret lived only a few blocks away. He parked near a cafe and went inside, pulling his collar up like he didn't want to be recognized. I parked further down, heart pounding as I craned my neck to watch through the glass. He wasn't meeting coworkers. He wasn't sipping coffee alone. He slid into a booth across from a man I didn't recognize, tall, sharp-featured with a scar running down his cheek. They leaned in close, speaking in hushed tones. Not Margaret. Someone else entirely. My fingers dug into the steering wheel. What on earth is going on? That night, I played the role of the perfect wife. I kissed him at the door, served dinner, laughed at his small talk. But inside, my brain spun like a storm. The phone messages, the bank transfers, the secret meeting. Every puzzle piece pointed to something darker than a simple family obligation. After dinner, when he went to shower, I snuck back to his phone. This time it was locked. He never locked it before. That told me everything. He knew I was getting suspicious. But so was I, and I was done pretending. Lying in bed later, I stared at his sleeping face. Once I'd trusted that face completely. Now I saw secrets etched in every line, lies hidden behind every smile. I whispered to myself, I'll find out the truth, Daniel. No matter how deep I have to dig. Because if Margaret wouldn't tell me and Daniel wouldn't tell me, then I would uncover it on my own. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The morning light spilled across our kitchen table, but my world felt dimmer than ever. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching Daniel as he scrolled through his phone. He was relaxed, too relaxed, like a man who believed he had nothing to hide. But I knew better now. And if he thought he could keep lying to me, he was about to learn otherwise. "Daniel," I said lightly, breaking the silence, "you'll never believe who I saw yesterday." He didn't look up. Who?" "Margaret," I replied smoothly. "She was at the grocery store." His hand froze over his phone just for a fraction of a second before he forced a casual smile. "Oh, small world." I sipped my coffee, pretending not to notice. "Yeah. Funny thing though. She acted like she didn't even know me. Isn't that strange?" Daniel laughed, but it was hollow. "She probably didn't recognize you. She doesn't get out much, you know." I tilted my head, studying him. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That was lie number one. Later that afternoon I set another trap. "Hey," I called from the living room as he sat down with his laptop. "Do you remember when your mom mentioned visiting your sister back when we first got married? What year was that again?" He blinked, his expression blank for a second too long. Oh, that was ages ago." He probably meant one of my cousins. "You know how she mixes things up." I smiled sweetly. "Right. Of course." Lie number two. The next day I planted something bigger. At dinner, while cutting my chicken, I said casually, "I was looking at our bank statement earlier. Looks like a couple of charges from a cafe across town. I was thinking of trying it out. What's it like?" The knife clattered against his plate. He quickly covered with a laugh. "Oh, that. Just a place near the office. I grab coffee there sometimes. Nothing special." But I knew better. I'd seen him meet that scar-faced stranger there. Lie number three. That night, while he brushed his teeth, I rehearsed my next move. When he came to bed, I snuggled close, resting my head on his chest. "You know, Daniel," I murmured softly, "sometimes I worry you're keeping things from me." His body tensed under me. "Why would you say that?" he asked, his voice careful. I looked up at him, feigning innocence. "Just a feeling. But then I remind myself, you'd never lie to me, right?" He forced a smile and kissed my forehead. "Of course not." Lie number four. The following evening I set my boldest trap yet. I left a note on the counter where he'd see it, half hidden under the mail. It read, "Spoke to Margaret today. She told me everything." I hid behind the kitchen doorway, heart hammering, and waited. Minutes later, Daniel came in, dropped his keys, and flipped through the mail. His eyes landed on the note. He picked it up, read it, and for the briefest second, panic flickered across his face. He crumpled the note in his fist and shoved it deep into his pocket. When I walked in a moment later, I pretended not to notice. "Rough day?" I asked sweetly. He forced a chuckle. "Just the usual." But his hands shook when he reached for a glass of water. That night, I lay awake beside him again, listening to his steady breathing. Each trap I'd set had caught something: hesitation, panic, denial. I'd chipped away at his mask, and beneath it I saw fear. But fear of what? Of me knowing? Or of something even bigger? I whispered into the darkness, words meant only for myself. "Keep lying, Daniel. Keep digging your hole. Because soon enough I'll bury you in the truth." And with that vow burning in my chest, I drifted into a restless sleep, already planning my next move. The air was heavy with late evening humidity as I stood by the window, watching Daniel tie his shoes. He moved quickly, muttering something about a late-night client call. His voice was calm, but I caught that nervous flicker in his eyes. My instinct screamed at me, "Follow him." As soon as the door closed behind him, I grabbed my keys, slipped into my car, and waited a full 2 minutes before pulling onto the road. My pulse drummed in my ears. This wasn't the first time I'd tailed him, but tonight felt different. Urgent. Final. Daniel drove with purpose, taking turns I knew by heart. But instead of heading toward the cafe or his office, he veered into a quieter part of town, a neighborhood dotted with modest single-family homes. I slowed my car, keeping far enough behind so he wouldn't notice. Finally, he pulled up in front of a small, cream-colored house with blue shutters. A porch light glowed softly, casting shadows across the yard. I parked half a block down, heart hammering, and watched. Daniel stepped out, adjusted his jacket, and walked to the door. He didn't knock. He used a key. My breath caught. The door swung open and a woman appeared. Mid-40s with tired eyes and auburn hair tied back in a loose bun. She smiled faintly, like someone who'd been waiting. Daniel leaned down, kissed her cheek, and slipped inside. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. My vision blurred as tears burned my eyes. For a moment I couldn't breathe. He has another woman. I sat frozen in my car, fighting the urge to storm up and demand answers right then. But something told me to wait. To watch. Minutes crawled by. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened, my mind spiraling. Who was she? How long had this been going on? Was Margaret even his sister? Or just another part of this twisted secret? Finally, I forced myself to move. I got out of the car, keeping low, and crept closer through the shadows. From the sidewalk, I could see into a window partially covered by sheer curtains. Inside, Daniel sat on the sofa beside the woman. They weren't touching, but their posture was familiar, like this wasn't their first meeting. Papers lay scattered across the coffee table between them. I squinted, trying to make out the details. Not love letters. Not bills. Something thicker, official-looking. Documents. The woman pointed at one sheet, speaking earnestly. Daniel rubbed his forehead, looking exhausted, like a man trapped. Not lovers, then. Something else. Confusion tangled with my anger. If this wasn't an affair, what was it? The front door suddenly creaked. I ducked behind the hedge just as the woman stepped out onto the porch, glancing around cautiously before lighting a cigarette. Her shoulders sagged as though the weight of the world pressed down on her. I held my breath, barely 10 feet away, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. Then, as if sensing something, she turned her head slightly, eyes scanning the dark street. For a split second I thought our gazes met. I shrank back into the shadows, trembling. After a long drag, she exhaled and muttered to herself, "This can't go on much longer." Her voice was low, but the words sliced through me. This can't go on much longer. What couldn't? The money? The lies? My marriage? She flicked her cigarette into the yard and went back inside. I stumbled back to my car, every step heavy. My chest ached with a storm of emotions. Jealousy, fury, fear, confusion. Inside the car, I slammed the door shut and gripped the steering wheel. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. "No," I whispered to myself, my voice trembling but fierce. "I'm not the fool he thinks I am. I'll find out who she is. And I'll find out why my husband has a key to her house." I started the engine, but instead of driving away, I pulled out my phone. I typed the house's address into the Notes app. If Daniel thought he could keep living two lives, he was dead wrong. Because tomorrow I would start digging into this woman's identity. And once I had her name, the truth would finally unravel. That night, when Daniel slipped into bed beside me smelling faintly of cigarette smoke, I kept my breathing slow and even, pretending to be asleep. But inside I burned with a single consuming thought. The lies are closing in, Daniel. And I'm right behind them. I woke the next morning with fire in my veins. Sleep had been impossible. Images of Daniel kissing that woman's cheek, walking freely into her house with his own key, burned in my mind. Every time I blinked, I saw them together on that sofa, those papers spread across the table. Enough was enough. Today I wasn't just going to wonder who she was. I was going to find out. The first step was simple. I typed her address into the county property records website. My hands trembled as I entered the numbers, and my heart lurched when a name appeared on the screen. Claire Whitmore. A woman I'd never heard of in my life. I whispered the name under my breath like it was poison. Claire Whitmore. Who was she to Daniel? Why had he never mentioned her? I dug deeper. Google searches. Public records. Social media. Slowly a picture began to form. Claire was 46, a nurse at a nearby clinic. Divorced, no kids. Her online presence was thin, but one detail made my stomach churn. 10 years ago she'd lived in another state. The same state Daniel used to work in before I met him. My blood ran cold. I couldn't stop there. By afternoon I found myself driving back to her neighborhood, pulse hammering. If I wanted real answers, I had to get close. I parked a few houses down, pretending to check my phone, and watched her street. Neighbors bustled about, mowing lawns, walking dogs. Normal life. Finally, I spotted an older woman watering her roses across the street from Claire's place. Her kind eyes and curious glance told me she might be the chatty type. Perfect. I stepped out of the car and walked over, clutching my phone like I was lost. "Excuse me," I said with a polite smile. "I'm trying to get in touch with a friend. She mentioned she lived near here." "Claire Whitmore. Does she still live in that cream house?" The neighbor beamed. "Oh yes, Claire's been here a few years now. Such a lovely woman. Keeps to herself mostly, but she's always helping folks. My husband had a fall last year and she came running with her nurse's kit." "Sounds wonderful," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Is she married?" The neighbor shook her head. "No, not since she moved here. Divorced, I think. But she does get visits, sometimes from her family, sometimes from, well." The woman lowered her voice conspiratorially. "A man. Handsome tall fellow. Comes by often." My throat tightened. "Oh. Do you know his name?" She chuckled. "I don't, but I've seen him bring groceries. Real gentleman. Claire deserves someone good after everything she's been through." My smile wavered, but I thanked her and walked back to my car, legs trembling. A gentleman. Groceries. Frequent visits. My husband. Back home, I paced the kitchen, mind spinning. Claire wasn't just a random stranger. She was someone Daniel cared enough about to support, to visit, to keep secret from me. But why? I had to know. That evening, after Daniel left again with another flimsy late meeting excuse, I drove back to Claire's. This time I parked directly across the street. My hands shook as I crossed and rang the bell. The door opened and there she was. Claire. Up close, she looked even more tired than she had the other night, her auburn hair falling loose around her face. She studied me with wary eyes. "Yes." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "I'm Daniel's wife." Her entire body stiffened. For a moment, silence stretched between us. Then in a low, steady voice she said, "You shouldn't be here." The same words Margaret had thrown at me. I swallowed hard. "I need to know what's going on. Why is my husband coming here? Why does he have a key to your house? And what are you to him?" Her eyes darted around the street, checking for prying eyes. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, the house smelled faintly of antiseptic and old wood. Claire gestured to the couch, but I remained standing, arms folded tight across my chest. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I told Daniel this day would come." My heart raced. "Then tell me the truth." She met my gaze, her eyes full of something between pity and fear. "The truth is, you've married a man with secrets you can't even imagine. And if you keep digging, those secrets won't just destroy him. They'll destroy you too." My breath hitched. The same ominous warning Margaret had given me, spoken in almost the exact same words. But this time I was too far gone to stop. "I don't care," I whispered fiercely. "I deserve to know who my husband really is." Claire held my stare for a long moment. Then finally she said softly, "Then sit down. Because you're not ready for what you're about to hear." I lowered myself onto the edge of Claire's sofa, though my body screamed to run. Her words lingered like a storm cloud. "You're not ready for what you're about to hear. Tell me," I demanded, my voice trembling. "No more riddles. I need the truth." Claire folded her hands tightly in her lap. For a moment she looked like she was deciding whether to speak at all. Then with a weary sigh she said, "Daniel wasn't always Daniel." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" She leaned forward. "The man you married had another name once. Another life. And that life ended long before you ever knew him." I shook my head. "You're not making sense." Her eyes softened with pity. "Of course you don't understand. He never wanted you to. But I knew him years ago. Long before you. He was called David Whittaker." The name hit me like ice water. David. My husband wasn't even who he said he was. Claire continued, her voice low. "Back then he wasn't some clean-cut businessman. He was reckless. He gambled, made deals with the wrong people, borrowed money he could never repay. And when it all went south, he ran. My pulse thundered in my ears. You're lying. Daniel, David, whatever, you expect me to believe he was some criminal? Claire's expression darkened. I don't expect anything. I'm telling you facts. He got involved with dangerous people. People who don't forget debts. And when things turned violent, he vanished. Changed his name. Built a new life here. I gripped the arm of the couch, trying to steady myself. My husband, my Daniel, was a stranger. Why are you in this? I asked, voice sharp. What's your part in all this? Claire's face twisted with something like shame. Because I helped him disappear. The room spun. You what? She nodded, staring at the floor. Back then I was a nurse in the ER. He came to me bleeding one night. Said men were after him, said he'd die if I didn't help. I should have called the police, but instead, I patched him up. Hid him. He begged me to give him a new chance. And stupidly I did. I pressed my hands against my mouth. A scream threatened to tear out, but I swallowed it back. Why now? I asked, my voice muffled. Why is he back in your life? Claire's gaze met mine, haunted. Because the past doesn't stay buried. They found traces of him again. And Daniel, David knows it. That's why he's been hiding papers, sneaking out, making deals you don't understand. He's trying to protect you. And himself. Her words stung. Protect me? By lying every day of our marriage? I rose abruptly, pacing the room. You think telling me this makes it better? You think I can just go home and sleep next to him knowing he's been living a double life? Claire stood too, her voice urgent. Listen to me. He loves you. Don't doubt that. But if you push too far, if you expose him, you'll put yourself in danger. These men, they don't care about wives, about innocence. If they know you're tied to him, you'll become leverage. A shiver ran down my spine. So what? You're saying stay quiet? Pretend I know nothing. She shook her head. I'm saying, be careful. Ask yourself if you want the full truth, because once you have it, there's no going back. Her words echoed Margaret's. Two women miles apart, both warning me away from the same man. I felt tears sting my eyes. I don't even know who I married anymore. Claire's face softened, and for the first time her voice wavered. Neither do I. The drive home blurred. My hands clutched the wheel, my mind a whirlpool of names, debts, blood, and secrets. Daniel wasn't Daniel. My husband was once David. A man who ran. A man who hid. By the time I pulled into our driveway, my chest ached from holding my breath. Inside, the house was quiet, but his shoes were by the door. He was home. I stood there in the hallway staring at them, every muscle in my body tight. Should I storm into the living room and demand answers? Should I tell him I knew? But Claire's warning echoed in my ears. If you push too far, you'll put yourself in danger. My hand hovered on the doorknob, torn between fear and fury. For now I turned away. But inside one thought burned. I would get the whole truth. No matter what it cost. I woke up the next morning with Claire's words still scratching inside my skull. Daniel wasn't always Daniel. When he slid into bed late the night before, I pretended to be asleep. His arm draped over me, heavy and familiar, but all I could feel was the weight of lies. Now in the morning light I told myself, if I can't get the truth from him directly, I'll pull it out piece by piece. I'll test him. I'll watch how he reacts. At breakfast I set the first trap. You slept late, I said casually, sliding eggs onto his plate. You must have been exhausted. Long night at work. Daniel froze for the briefest second before nodding. Yeah, reports kept me up. I didn't want to wake you when I came in. I sipped my coffee, hiding my face. Claire had said he was sneaking out, meeting people. And he had come in late. I hummed. Funny. I thought I heard your car around midnight. You must have been back earlier than you think. His fork clinked against the plate. Maybe you were dreaming. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. First crack, I thought. Later that afternoon, I left a bank envelope on the counter. Empty, but with $2,500 cash, scribbled across the front. I positioned myself at the kitchen window where I could watch without being seen. Daniel walked in, saw the envelope and froze. His hand hovered over it, then snatched it up. He opened it quickly, brows furrowed when he found nothing inside. His jaw tightened and he shoved it back where he found it. When I walked in a moment later, I pretended to notice it. "Oh, did you see the envelope? Margaret dropped it by earlier." He stiffened. "Margaret? Why would she?" He cut himself off and forced a laugh. "I didn't touch it." I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Really? Because it looked like it moved." His smile was thin. "You're imagining things." Another crack. That evening, while folding laundry, I played my next card. I slipped a shirt of his onto the bed, but inside the pocket I had tucked a scrap of paper with a fake name and number. "Tony, call me about the debt." When Daniel came in to change, I lingered by the dresser, pretending to match socks. He reached for the shirt, froze again as the paper fluttered out. He bent quickly, snatched it up and shoved it deep into his pocket like he didn't want me to see. "Everything okay?" I asked, glancing over. He turned, smiled too wide. "Yeah, fine. Just an old receipt." "Oh." I stepped closer, hand out. "Want me to toss it?" He gripped his pocket like it held gold. "No. It's nothing. I'll take care of it." My heart pounded, but I kept my voice even. "All right." He left the room quickly, his shoulders tense. "Got you," I thought. That night I set the biggest trap of all. I waited until we were lying in bed, the lights off, the hum of the heater filling the silence. Then I whispered as if in a dream. "David." Daniel jerked beside me. Kept my breathing slow, steady, feigning sleep. But inside, adrenaline rushed through me. He whispered back, voice hoarse, "Who told you that name?" I almost gasped, but I bit my tongue, staying still. After a long silence, he turned over, away from me. Only when his breathing evened out did I allow a tear to slip down my cheek. So it's true, I thought. Claire wasn't lying. He really was David. The next morning he was extra attentive. Made me coffee, kissed me more than usual, even asked if I wanted to go out for dinner that night. It was guilt. I could see it in the way his eyes lingered on me, as if begging me not to look too deep. But I wasn't going to stop. The lies were peeling away layer by layer. And soon I'd force him into a corner where there was nowhere left to run. For now, I smiled, kissed his cheek and whispered sweetly, "That sounds lovely." Inside I was screaming, "I know who you are, Daniel." Or should I say, David. I'd spent weeks circling the truth, pulling strings and setting traps like a woman living in shadows. But now the shadows weren't enough. My chest was heavy with every lie he'd told, every late-night absence, every time he'd looked into my eyes and sworn his innocence. Tonight I wanted the truth to bleed out of him, raw and undeniable. Daniel sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone while sipping a beer. I placed his plate in front of him, roast chicken, his favorite, my hands steady even though my insides quivered. "Looks good," he said, glancing up at me with a smile. "Eat," I murmured, taking my seat across from him. For a few minutes we chewed in silence. I watched his every move, every flick of his fork, every swallow. Then I spoke. Calm. Deliberate. "How was your day, David?" The fork slipped from his hand, clattering onto the plate. His head snapped up, eyes wide. "What did you just say?" I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. I said, "How was your day, David Whittaker?" His face drained of color. For a long moment the only sound was the ticking clock on the wall. Finally he whispered, "Where did you hear that name?" "From people who actually tell me the truth." I shot back, my voice rising. "Unlike you. Unlike the man I thought I married." Daniel pushed back from the table, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't what you think." "Oh, spare me," I cut in sharply. My hands shook, but I held my ground. "Every night, every secret, every missing dollar. You thought I wouldn't find out? You thought you could bury David and pretend he never existed." His jaw clenched. "I did it to protect us." "Protect us?" I slammed my hand on the table. "Protect us by lying to me? By sneaking out to meet other women, by sending money God knows where, by dragging me into whatever mess you ran from?" His eyes narrowed. "So you've been following me?" "Of course I have." My laugh was bitter. Because my husband became a stranger in front of me and I needed to know why. And now I do. You weren't Daniel all along. You were a coward named David who ran from his debts, from his crimes, from his own life. His nostrils flared. He opened his mouth, then shut it, pacing like a caged animal. Finally he turned, his voice low and ragged. Yes. I was David. I made mistakes, horrible ones. I gambled, I borrowed, I got in too deep. But I ran because the alternative was death. You think those men would have forgiven me? You think prison would have been kinder? My chest ached, but I shook my head. And you thought lying to me for our entire marriage was better? That I'd never find out? He stopped pacing, his shoulders slumping. For the first time his voice cracked. I never wanted you to know. Because if you did, you'd see me for what I am, a ruined man. And you'd leave. Tears burned my eyes. Don't you get it? I'm not leaving because of your past. I'm breaking because of your lies. You stole my choice. You made me live with a ghost instead of a husband. Silence thickened between us. He stood there, breathing heavily, his fists unclenched at his sides. Then he whispered, almost childlike, I love you. That's the only truth that matters. I shook my head slowly. Love doesn't erase betrayal. Love doesn't erase David. He stepped closer, desperate. So what now? You'll run to the police? You'll expose me? I met his eyes, steady despite my trembling body. No. I'll do something worse. His brows knit. What do you mean? I rose from the table, every muscle stiff with resolve. I'm not going to destroy you, Daniel. I'm going to let you destroy yourself. Because the lies you've built this house on, they're already crumbling. And when they collapse, I'll be standing on the other side, free. His face twisted, half in fear, half in rage. Don't do this, he warned. Don't make me your enemy. I stepped past him, my voice low but sharp. You did that all by yourself. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling while he tossed restlessly. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of his secrets. I was waiting. Waiting for the collapse. And when it came, I'd be ready. The morning after the confrontation, Daniel moved around the house like a storm contained in human form. His footsteps were heavier, his silences louder, his glances sharper. I stayed out of his way, though my mind buzzed with one thought. This is the beginning of the end. 2 weeks passed. The tension grew unbearable. He came home late almost every night, eyes bloodshot, smelling faintly of smoke and fear. His phone never left his pocket. Once I caught him whispering in the garage at midnight, his voice low and frantic. I told you I'll get it, just give me time. That was when I knew, his past wasn't just catching up. It had arrived. One evening there was a pounding at the front door. Daniel stiffened, nearly knocking over his glass of water. I'll get it, I said quietly. When I opened the door, 2 men stood there. Rough, broad-shouldered, eyes that had seen too many debts unpaid. Is David Whitaker here? One of them asked flatly. I froze. Daniel appeared behind me instantly, shoving me back. She doesn't know anything, he snapped. The man smirked. Oh, but she will. I caught a glimpse of the envelope in his hand before Daniel slammed the door shut and locked it. His face was pale. Who were they? I whispered, though I already knew. Nobody, he muttered, pacing like a trapped wolf. Stop lying. I screamed. They called you David. They know who you are. He spun, his face twisted. You wanted the truth? Here it is. They're the men I owe. The ones I've been paying off every month. That's where the money went. And it's never enough. My heart sank. How much? His silence was my answer. Too much. The house became unbearable after that. I slept with one eye open, terrified of a knock on the door that wouldn't end with it shutting. So I made a decision. Quietly, secretly, I gathered what I could. Bank statements, phone records, every piece of evidence tying Daniel to his hidden past. And then I did what I'd once sworn never to do. I called the police. The night they came for him, he didn't fight. He sat at the dining table, staring blankly at the wall as the officers cuffed his wrists. I loved you, he said hoarsely, eyes meeting mine. I swallowed hard. But you didn't trust me. That's not love. He bowed his head, and for the first time he looked small, like a man crushed under the weight of his own lies. As they let him out, one of the officers handed me a folder. "We'll need you to testify. He's been under investigation for months. You may have saved yourself by coming forward." When the door closed behind them, silence filled the house. For years, it had been Daniel's lies that filled these walls. Now for the first time there was only me. Only truth. Weeks later, the trial revealed everything. The debts, the false identity, the shell companies, the money laundering. Headlines splashed his name, or rather both names, across the papers. David Whitaker, a.e. Daniel Morris, arrested for fraud and organized crime ties. I sat in the courtroom as he stood in chains, and for a fleeting second he looked at me with something like regret. Or maybe it was just fear. When the judge sentenced him, I didn't cry. I didn't clap either. I just breathed, deep and steady, for the first time in years. Freedom was not instant. Healing wasn't easy. Nights were long and lonely, the bed too big without his presence. And yet, every morning I woke up lighter. I no longer checked his phone. I no longer followed his car. I no longer feared the knock on the door. I began to rebuild. Slowly. I joined a women's support group. Women who had lived through betrayal, abuse, secrets. Sharing my story with them made me realize I wasn't just a victim. I was a survivor. Margaret came to see me once, her eyes wet. "I tried to warn you," she whispered. "I know," I said gently. "But I had to learn it myself." Claire wrote me a letter from out of town. She apologized for everything, for helping him run all those years ago. "Maybe now you can live the life I was too afraid to choose for myself," she wrote. I tucked that letter into my journal, not out of anger but as a reminder. We all have choices. Months later, I stood in my backyard, watching the sunset paint the sky gold and crimson. The air felt different, fresher, like the world had given me a second chance. Daniel, or David, was gone. His lies were gone with him. What remained was me, scarred, yes, but stronger. I whispered to myself, to the wind, to anyone listening, I survived. And I will never let someone steal my truth again. And with that, I stepped back into the house, not broken, not bitter, but free.